I'm Stephen Foskett, and this is Cloud Field Day coming to you from beautiful Sunnyvale, California. We are here at the offices of Druva, and we've invited in a panel of independent writers, bloggers, speakers, podcasters to interact and discuss during a presentation of Druva's technology. If you'd like to learn more about this, you can go to techfieldday.com and learn how to become a presenter or a delegate yourself. You can find more videos like this at youtube.com/techfieldday.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is the IT admin view of InSync in the cloud. As soon as he logs into cloud.druva.com, he gets a dashboard. It's a modular, card-based viewing system for the IT admin to see what's happening in his organization. He looks at how many devices are being protected, how many devices are enabled, what kind of how many cloud application, how many people are using it, any legal hold policies in place, compliance policies, how many users and custodians are there in place. We also have something known as DLP in the platform, which is basically a data loss prevention module which enables encryption on endpoint devices. And it also locates the devices within a 10 to 20 meter accuracy as well, and I'll show you that as well. So if you ever lose your device in a bar or in a taxi, and you have sensitive information in it, you can alert the IT admin and he can remote wipe all that information as well. The policy can be set also that if the device hasn't checked into their servers or their backup hasn't happened in X amount of days, it automatically deletes the content over there as soon as it wakes up. So you have the DLP capability, basically just to avoid any data breaches or any loss of information as well. Gives you a summary of data utilization in the organization by the region, whether it is on a profile basis, file level basis, the type of files you have, or naturally by the data source. This is a good point for me to highlight that what I'm showing you is a demo environment, and so if you see zeros over here, it just means that we have very little data stored relative to 8 terabytes in these particular data sources. So keep that in mind and just know that this is just a demo environment. So naturally, where the information resides, it gives you a breakdown of that in your organization. And then the backup and restores that are occurring within the organization, how much data is being shared in the organization as well, how many users are there and how are they utilizing it, and the data trends that they have, pretty much total data available being utilized in the organization. So when you're trying to set up a backup policy, for example, and this is where I'll be able to answer some of your questions that you had asked earlier, let's go ahead and set up a backup policy. So I want to say you typically start from a policy perspective. How many people do you want in this particular profile such that backups will follow a particular set of rules and regulations? And that is shown over here. So if I want to have about 20 people in this profile, I can go ahead and set it up. 0 means unlimited data. So if an end user has a lot of data or something of the sort and you have that kind of provision through us, you have the ability to protect unlimited data on a per user basis. And then I'm going to enable about 10 devices per person in my organization that they can bring and add their InSync lightweight agent to. Essentially, what this means is that we don't charge on a per device basis, we charge on a per user basis. So we will charge you or the organization on a per user per month basis, and that user can have up to 10 devices. Okay, backup content. If you look at it from a Windows, Mac, or Linux perspective, you have the ability as an IT administrator to back up or enforce certain backups of any certain types of folders within the Windows system. I can set up exclusions that I don't want any particular media files. And over here, this checkbox over here pretty much allows the end user to determine what kind of data they would like to back up. So basically, you're giving the end user the power to determine what folders he or she should back up. Naturally, if you go ahead and check mark all these off, all drives, that means you're backing up as an IT administrator, enforcing it. But if you go ahead and uncheck these off and say, all right, I'm not going to back up all drives and my documents and their favorites, or maybe we can enforce favorites, and allow the end user determine what folders they want to back up. This way, there is now a segregation of information that the end user can determine. If it's my personal photographs that I don't want to share within or back up in the system, then I can configure that, and InSync will not capture that. Then finally, this application settings. This is what controls the persona backup, the application settings backup that we highly recommend people use, and it's a very good use case for a lot of people when doing refreshes of devices so that end user devices can come back to life to the way they had it before the migration.
A question on the segregation, because if you give users the option to say don't back some stuff up, then they'll put critical data there because humans. Is it possible to have, the segregation and say, well, it'll be backed up, that's fine, but the keys for the encryption are under your control? So that way it's definitely backed up, and when you're a dumbass and go and delete something by mistake,
so
we can get it back, but the corporation can't see it.
Yeah, so there are two provisions to that. Well, there's one provision to that, but the answer to that is we don't have that capability yet. And we don't have that capability. But what we also do have in the platform is a privacy setting where the end user can restrict the IT administrator from seeing all his or her data. Okay. But that is on a global basis, all his data that InSync is touching. So that means corporate data as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to say something more to that, or? Okay, great. So then you can do similar for Mac and Linux devices and give the ability to the end user to determine what they can back up. Then from a backup schedule perspective.
So you can also back up their persona settings on their Mac to restore their Mac OS to their personal settings.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Backup schedule, we can go as often as 5 minutes, or we can go as often as 1 week. As an IT admin, you have the ability to control that, or you can allow the end user to determine how often their backups need to be happen. And then you can set a window through which backups will occur or not. You can determine that as well. Something that's very popular with a lot of our customers is bandwidth throttling. And that is essentially making sure that if I'm in a setting where the bandwidth is not very good, then all I have to do, and I can give the end user this capability to control that if he wants, that hey, only 30% of my available bandwidth should be allocated towards Druva InSync for backups, then you can restrict that from that perspective as well, and also restrict your CPU priority as to how much of the resources of your computer should be delegated towards backup. It does a ping, live ping, determines the bandwidth and says on a percentage basis, all right, 30% of that will be allocated for backups. And the good news is that since Druva InSync deduplicates globally on a storage basis, very little information is actually transferred over the wire. So naturally, even a 20% to 30% or 40% bandwidth throttling, essentially, not only you're using very little bandwidth, but since very little information is going, it doesn't really hamper backups. And that's one thing that we've heard time and again from organizations where it has been very good for end users. They don't turn off backups or anything because it just happens seamlessly. Okay, you also can allow users to opt out of networks for backups. So you don't want, as a user, I use this feature a lot when I'm traveling. I don't want my information to be backed up when I'm in, say, India, for example, because my network isn't very good. So I say, all right, InSync, don't back it up from my home system, but when I'm in my office in India, then go ahead and back up from that particular place. So I have the ability to set that as well. Okay, backup policies. This is pretty much your retention policies, how long you want to set it up for, how long you want to retain information for. You can set zeros and set it for permanent, or you can say you want your weeklies and your monthlies and your yearlies to be for a certain amount of time. You can set that up as well. Then there's this privacy settings that I was talking to you about earlier, where an end user can restrict the IT administrator from viewing all his data. So if there's a CFO that has very sensitive information and he doesn't want anyone to have access to that information, including IT administrators, he can go ahead and make sure that the IT administrator has no visibility to that information. And then we, of course, work with single sign-on vendors like Okta to provide single sign-on capabilities as well.
Why would someone choose to use Azure versus AWS outside of they already use one?
That happens at the time of configuration. So when the organization starts doing a POC, they determine what kind of services they want, and then we will configure it for them. But he would have more further details from an SE perspective.
Yeah, pretty much what Seyi said. When we are working with a customer, they tell us which regions they want and whether they want AWS or Azure.
Right. Sorry. My question is more of why would somebody choose Azure versus AWS outside of the fact that maybe they're already using one? Like, is there a difference in the product?
There's no difference in the product. What we have seen is sometimes they have much more, can say, stronger relationships or contracts with either Azure or AWS, and they have that kind of preference that they want to do either or. Sometimes what happens is if in a specific region AWS is not available, but Azure is available, we can use the Azure as an option.
Canada is an example, correct? Am I
Yes.
right? Canada is an example, and they also, certain policies also avoid information being shared outside Canada, and so Azure would be a very good use case over there.
Okay.
Now-
and if you guys, sorry,
go
if you
ahead.
guys have, if somebody has a reason that they either need to, they want to go from AWS to Azure, or maybe they're in AWS and they want to move their data to another region, do you guys provide that functionality, or how would somebody do that?
So we, as of today, we do not allow migrating data between two regions at all, even if you're on the AWS side of the things. So if you're moving from AWS to Azure, we still don't allow. But what we can do is, and this is more of a PS engagement which we bring in, we have something which we call as Cloud Cache. So we can place it locally on your premise, or we can host it as well. What we do is we can quickly have either the local copy of the data seeded to Cloud Cache, and then Cloud Cache and seed to the new region itself. Or what we can do is we can have the copy in the cloud seed to Cloud Cache, because it works reverse as well, and then seed it other way.
Okay.
It's not like very easy to do. We involve PS in that operation, but it's possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And so when customer signs up for this, they deal strictly with you guys, right? They don't go to Microsoft, they don't go to Amazon.
That is correct.
Correct.
So why would just out of my curiosity, why would a strong relationship with one of the two sway them in that direction?
Sometimes they're competitors. So we go in and they say that, we think that Amazon is our competitor. So
We don't want to give them money.
yes,
Even
exactly.
on the back end, we don't want to give them money.
Yes.
They can
So-
also use their Azure credits or Microsoft credits towards this.
Yeah, so
yeah?
if they have negotiated pricing already, will you take that to the account of how you bill, or like if they can get storage or instances, maybe they have a large block. I don't know if you have large customers that do that, but
So in that case, what we do is we work with the rep, the AWS rep. Let's say they have a special pricing, right?
Okay.
Right. We work with them to try to match their pricing. But what we say is, from a billing perspective, it's going to go through us rather than
I
through.
mean, I can't imagine most people have better storage pricing with either company than you guys, right? I mean, I imagine you buy a lot of storage from them, and you
We
get
do.
breaks.
Yes.
But you can use Microsoft credits out of an ELA, something like that, if you have them.
I don't know that yet. That is something which is in works. I don't know, Dave, you
Okay.
want to answer? How to use Microsoft credits if you want to use it?
We would work directly with Microsoft and the customer. There's a way, depending on how the contract's designed and everything, that we have to follow a certain process with them.
okay.
Yep. Okay, from a mobile device perspective, Android and iOS is what we support from a backup perspective. We also partner with MDM providers to enable higher security on those devices. So if you don't want to share certain files or open, restrict all of that kind of thing, and not allow the end user to print also, we can get as a whitelisted application in the MDM provider, and we can utilize that as well from that perspective. Similar from backing up over cellular versus their home Wi-Fi's, you can give the end user the capability and then back up what folders on an Android device, say their SD card, and how often they want to do it as well. Okay, then the other thing that we were talking about was DLP capabilities. You can set that up if you want the device to auto-delete corporate information. They have the ability to do that as well. After so many days, it will immediately auto-wipe. Or if you don't want to have that, then we can trace the device as well. You have these options to set as well. And then you want to encrypt the InSync share folder. You could do that as well. And then similar for endpoint devices like smartphones and tablets, you have the ability to set whether you want to allow for opening of files in other applications or not, and then trace that as well. InSync share capabilities, you have the ability to set InSync share. You can restrict who the users are. You can restrict guest users. You can set passwords for sharing, limit the number of views, limit the number of downloads. and naturally that's available within, and all an IT has to do is create a workspace, or end users can create the folders and they can share link, just primarily like what you've seen in Box and Dropbox, quickly create a link and send it out, and they can actually do that. And then cloud applications, it's a matter of configuring it. We support today Box, Office 365, OneDrive, Exchange Online, Google Drive, and Gmail. And this is done on a profile level. So if there are certain users that use Gmail only, you can back their content. And some people do, say, for example, Exchange. You can set that up as well over here as in the profile. So that's at a very high level, the granular capabilities of InSync's backup, or its availability capabilities, which is essentially backup and restore. So now let's take a real quick drive through with data insights. And this is the ability to search for files, metadata search within the organization. And it'll tell you where the file is, where it was located, and search for that particular file, and you have the ability to do that as well. Legal hold capabilities, if you are in a litigation, say Apple versus Samsung, I just created that, and I put two users over here. All of a sudden now I have the information that George Taylor backs up. It doesn't matter where his data is, because InSync doesn't care about that. Whatever you have configured, it'll collect all that information, and then Rachel Smith as well. So from a data access perspective, if you look at it, all you need to do now is take this WebDAV link, and this is where our partnerships with e-discovery vendors comes in handy. They take that link and configure it such that now they have the ability to view and start reviewing and processing the information. So let me just log in over here real quick.
I have a question. It's not really about the product per se, but how do you guys handle legal requests? So as a user or a customer, I have a key to my data, but if you get a legal request for access to that data, do you guys have what is it just, hey, we can't help you, or do you have a way?
Let me
go ahead.
So because of the way that we store the token and the key, there's actually no way for Druva to access the data.
Okay.
We can't we can't access the key. That's why were we talking about envelope encryption earlier?
Right.
It's really dependent on your bits coming in and challenging that key to actually bring it to life,
okay.
Right? And the other thing is that one of the advantages of the key model that we do have, though, is that as a legal admin, because that key is the same key that's encrypting everybody's data, that allows you to actually manage the data for legal hold purposes, right?
Okay.
Versus a per user key model or a on-site, key server type model.
Yep.
So it actually provides an advantage from that standpoint.
Okay, great.
Okay, so with this WebDAV link now, the legal IT administrator can say for George Taylor, they have access to all his Box content, his emails, his laptop, his OneDrive, and all the content that exists in there is available to the legal admin, for example, and they can definitely get all this information right there. And so our partnership from a cloud-to-cloud based perspective with Disco, for example, they take this WebDAV link, they'll put it into their system, and data will immediately start transferring from our cloud into their cloud for their lawyers to start reviewing immediately. Okay, so that is from a governance standpoint. And then from a compliance standpoint, I want to log out of this system and go into another demo system, because that has a lot more data and it'll be very good show and tell. Okay, so now let's go into compliance. Now this system has a lot more data and it'll give you a lot more show and tell. So first and foremost, it'll tell you which compliance is our users violating, how many active violations there are, who the users are, and exactly what file it is, what kind of information is it violating. And if you go to the reports, which I can show eventually, it'll give you the detail of which operating system, which repository, which folder, when it was found, and how it is found. And also if there are multiple variations or multiple, what word am I looking for, versions, then it also flags that this person has two versions of it that has the non-compliance as well. So to set that up, someone was asking about compliance policies. Let's take a look at it real quick. So you can go into compliance policies and then look at the type of sensitive data that are predefined, that are available to you, that I had shown categorically on a regional basis to you earlier, whether it's related to PII or HIPAA. You can naturally create your own sensitive data, and then finally leverage the inbuilt templates. And by the way, this is very unique to Druva. Very few organizations have this capability of inbuilt templates, where an organization, say for example, wants to do HIPAA compliance, can immediately just go ahead and check mark HIPAA compliance, and it starts monitoring for HIPAA compliance immediately. And then finally, once you have determined what template you want to use, if you don't like this, you can create your own new template as well, and then create as many templates as you want. And we can create one, for example. This is a demo. Go to next. Select a region that you want to apply it for. Say, for example, United States. Let's look at HIPAA. What kind of information I want to monitor for? PHI. What is the critical threshold at which I want to get alerted for? I can say 4. I can go ahead and add that and say I want to monitor for medical ailments and diseases as well, and say that I'm a little bit more sensitive to that. Say 2. Add it, and a new template gets created immediately. And say what kind of data you want to search for. You can collect each one of these.
And is it multilingual?
Multilingual.
Not just English?
We do have support for Japanese and French.
But for instance, even inside of HIPAA? So not just because it's another country, but...
That's a good question.
I don't think so.
So you're saying that...
What if the medical records were, the medical notes were recorded in Spanish?
Oh, yes. No, it is only in English right now.
Yeah. Okay. And
that's good too.
And so one of the other things, so I saw you had a country first, and then so there the other countries' HIPAA things.
You can create those yourself. Right now we have HIPAA for the U.S. for example.
Only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if well, let's check that. Good question. Let's look at it for. Let's look at it from a South Africa perspective. There's no HIPAA there. Let's look at Germany. There is no HIPAA there. So if there is something that you're not looking that you need, you can actually create your own as well. So that flexibility is built. And this is primarily the way we determine what we want to support is basically based on our customer requests and what we're seeing where it's needed. So something like HIPAA in Germany probably hasn't been very, very popular for
or it's
what
covered
we've heard.
Under Canada, it's through our normal privacy, PAPITA. I can never say it correctly. I always want to say everything in Spanish. So yeah, there's all of that. So I'm wondering if now there's an opportunity for customers and or crowdsourcing, but not everyone on the internet, but to develop these packs or templates or whatever.
That could be very, there are opportunities out there absolutely to create those kind of packs, and then naturally we'll have to work with them to integrate it. But as of now, if there is something that isn't in there, then they can definitely create theirs and move forward from there.
Can you apply these compliance policies? Like, is there a concept of different data storage locations, like a different bucket or different? If I'm a customer, can I put data in multiple different containers and apply different policies to them?
Yeah, so that's the exact next thing we were doing is these policies could be applied towards anyone. You can select anything here based on the regions you have, and these regions naturally will have their own storage locations as well. It would permeate through that system that way. So you can naturally select it on those policies will be tied to a particular user and naturally all their storage nodes as well. Did I answer your question?
A little bit. So I mean, if I'm in, say, US East region for AWS, can I have multiple different buckets, I guess, with different policies applied to them?
Yeah, so let me answer that. So what you can do is, since this is all user-related data, how you bucket users is based on profiles.
Right.
We apply that to a profile. So I could have in US East 3 profiles. One could be sales, one could be marketing, and one could be finance, right? For sales, I could have a completely different profile and a policy, same as for marketing and same as for finance as well. So your bucketing is happening based on a profile itself.
Okay.
Can a user be part of multiple profiles?
Right. That was
No.
Okay.
But you can create multiple policies then.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Okay. I guess where I was going with it is if you have multiple different buckets and you have, say, HIPAA here but not here, is there any remediation if you find files from HIPAA in one bucket that shouldn't be there and move it to another one or something like that?
Not.
But it sounds like
I
the way
don't think-
policies are applied.
No,
it
yeah,
wouldn't
it's on a
matter.
user basis. That's how the policies are applied.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our automated compliance management perspective. Let's see. Now, I've covered governance, I've covered audit trails, I've covered compliance, I've covered backups. Okay, the last thing that I really want to show is now that the InSync admin has done what he does best, right? Set up all the policies, set up BYOD policies, set up all the schedules and all the monitoring and all that. How does the end user see all this? So there's a lightweight agent that sits on all these devices. Naturally, for cloud applications, there are API calls that we make. And if you look at the lightweight agent, it sits pretty much on your desktop, and it opens up as soon as you click on it. As an IT admin, I have the capability of giving an end user as much power as I want to. In this case, I happen to be a powerful user, so the IT admin has been kind enough to let me have more capabilities. So what I will see would naturally a lot of people may not be able to see. So for example, from a backup and restore capability, I have the ability to now, as an end user, look at all my snapshots and restore my files from those snapshots at any given time. And I can review all these particular snapshots. And this is where, something for ransomware that is that we help protect. If there are multiple snapshots out there, there will be a version out there that doesn't have it, and naturally you can always restore the information back to the version that doesn't have it. And so now I can granularly restore data to my particular device, for example, at any given point, and say, hey, I want to restore it to my laptop, I want to restore it back to the original location, or I can restore it to another or a custom location as well. So I have that ability to do from a restore perspective. And then sync and share, I have access to all my information that I'm synchronizing to the cloud, and I can share files within the organization. I can selectively sync certain workspaces or folders so that it doesn't consume too much of data on my laptop as well. And then there's the web version as well that the IT administrator can restrict end users from utilizing, but they have the same capabilities of sync and share of information from a web perspective where you can access all your data irrespective of where you are. And then from a settings perspective, this is where all the controls that are normally not given to a particular end user, like bandwidth throttling, CPU resources, whether I want to be able to pause backups or not, but what could be available to me is data privacy. This is where, as an end user, I can set that my IT administrator doesn't have the capability of reviewing any of my information. I can just go ahead and do that right over here. And then from a network perspective, I can restrict certain networks from backing up. So if I'm at my mom's house and I don't want my information to be backed up on her network, I can go ahead and restrict it right over here, and InSync will be like, all right, you know what? I will not bother backing up at that particular time.
So does InSync work for like
Cool.
VDI and thin clients and stuff like that?
No, it is only for end user data that within laptops, not for VDI now.
You could install it inside the machine.
Yeah.
In the back, right, that's running the VDI, and it could run within that
Indirectly.
system. There's no reason it couldn't do that. Sorry, I forget about the mics.
Question on seeding. So when I do this the first time, and I mean, I live in a country at the end of a piece of wet string, which is my internet. So cloud backup, well, it sounds awesome. It's just I have this infrastructure issue. So the first time I back up, how do I do that? Do I just wait several weeks for all of the
Trickle
ones and
backup.
zeros to figure it out how to get there? Do you have some sort of ship me a hard drive seed function?
So there are a couple of things that we do here. First and foremost, we cannot emphasize the savings of data that actually transfers over the wire through deduplication.
Yep.
We've seen significant savings, and the larger the organization, the more the dedupe savings.
Sure.
So the initial seeding may not be very large as you may think it is, right? Now, if you are a user that has a lot of data, then we also have something as cloud cache. You can seed it to an appliance, and that can transfer data during off-peak hours to the cloud as well. So between those two, those are the types of services that are available to you.
Okay.
Naturally, your very first backup could be large. From an end user perspective, not likely, but from an organization perspective, yes. But from an end user perspective, it may not be very large as you may think. I don't know. Do you want to add anything, Ryder, to that?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is the cloud cache piece works very well if you have a branch office, a remote office, you have like 10, 15, 50 people, you don't have enough bandwidth, put it temporarily, it will back up to cloud cache, and cloud cache can seed the data off peak hours.
Yeah.
If you have a single user problem, like when the user is remote, he's alone, he's working from an office or a home office, in that case, what you can do is, as an IT, you can ship a hard drive. They can dump their data, encrypt it, send it to the admin itself. They will dump on a temporary location. Since the dedupe happens, this admin will have to back it up using an agent. Because of dedupe, when the remote user starts the backup, they'll just transfer probably few megabytes only, and they're done.
Okay.
That's a smart workaround, actually. Nice.
Okay, so a little bit fiddly, but possible if you specifically need it.
Yeah, we generally what we do is for encryption and all that, we have utilities, we provide, our PS team gets engaged. So the entire deployment is very well hand-holded. Wherein we see, so generally what happens, the customer is very willing to do a mass rollout, but what we see is, number one, can we leverage remote users, right? Because some of them are working from their home office, they have good bandwidth, they should be the first ones to back up, right? All those locations which have good bandwidth. And as we roll out more users, the nth user is always going to get the benefit of deduplication.
Right, okay.
So it's a lot of planning we do with the customer. But yeah, deduplication, as Seyi said, is the first thing which helps you reduce the amount of data you want to transfer. Then there is cloud cache, and obviously there is an option to send a hard drive, encrypt the data, get it, and then see it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So that's all I have for today. If there's anything one thing I would like to say at the very end is that what InSync does, it protects end user information irrespective of where it lives, endpoints or cloud application, and it provides all these services on top of the backup technology, which is governance capabilities, so that IT guys have full visibility and control over the information irrespective of where it resides. And that's all offered in one platform or one suite, so that they have only one solution to work with.
Any plans to integrate the two products?
I don't think there are any plans today, but Dave could highlight.
Yeah, I mean, at present, what we find with most of our customers is there are two different groups, right? There's infrastructure that looks at Phoenix and its desktop services and the likes that really looks at InSync. So today we do have them separate. We have considered it in the past. We just haven't found the exact use case model yet. So.